Get out of my gym. This place isn't for girls like you. Preston Hale jabbed a finger toward Aaliyah and Zaria Carter, who stood beside the squat rack. Those weights are for athletes. Colton Vance smirked. Look at them. Matching outfits, matching attitudes. Bet they can't even lift the bar. Aaliyah remained perfectly still, while Zaria met their eyes with quiet composure. We're here to train, she said. We came to work hard, mind our own business, and get stronger, just like everyone else in this gym. Preston laughed. You two wouldn't survive my warm-up. Colton kicked Zaria's gym bag across the floor. Pick that up and go find a treadmill before somebody gets hurt. Preston pointed toward the exit. Touch those plates again and I'll throw you out myself. Neither of them had any idea that the twins had spent years training inside MMA cages, developing the kind of fighting skill that could make arrogant men regret ever underestimating them. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The heavy glass doors of Iron Forge Athletic Club swung open like the entrance to a place that had never expected women like them to walk through. Aaliyah felt it the moment she stepped inside. First came the cold air, then the smell, rubber mats, iron. Sweat that seemed to have soaked into the walls through years of training. The equipment was new. Everything gleamed beneath the bright lights. Chrome barbells lined the far wall like trophies. Floor-to-ceiling mirrors made the room appear twice its actual size, reflecting every person inside back at themselves. And at that moment, nearly everyone was looking at Aaliyah and Zaria. The music never stopped. Weights continued rising and falling, but something in the atmosphere changed. A ripple of awareness moved across the gym the instant the twins entered, almost as if they had interrupted something private. Aaliyah kept her chin level. An old gym bag hung from her right shoulder. The strap had been repaired twice with duct tape, and the fabric had faded from deep black to dull gray. Zaria carried an identical bag, the same wear, the same repairs, the same story. Their matching hoodies were clean but far from new. Their sneakers were worn along the soles. None of that mattered. At least, Aaliyah kept telling herself it didn't. She continued walking. Zaria remained close beside her, already scanning the room. They were heading toward the squat racks at the back when two men stepped directly into their path. Preston Hale moved first. I was big. Not simply tall, but thick through the shoulders and chest, in the way of someone who had spent years deliberately building himself into a man who occupied as much space as possible. He wore a sleeveless shirt that exposed heavily veined arms. He moved with the slow, effortless confidence of someone who had rarely been told to step aside. Colton Vance came up beside him, almost like a shadow that had learned how to laugh. I was already grinning. It was the kind of grin that said he had decided this was going to entertain him. They stopped directly in front of the squat racks. Whoa, whoa. Preston raised one hand and looked the twins over as though something strange had wandered in from the street. Y'all lost? Colton gave a short, sharp laugh. Seriously, he tilted his head toward their bags. What is that? Did you two sew those things together yourselves? What's holding that strap on? Is that tape? Zaria's jaw tightened. Aaliyah felt it without even looking at her. We're here to train, Aaliyah said. Her voice was flat and controlled, the way she needed it to be. Same as everybody else. Preston smiled. The expression never reached his eyes. Nah, see, that's the thing. This room is for real athletes. He gestured around the gym as though he owned it, and in every way that mattered there, he clearly believed he did. Not girls playing dress-up with their little taped-up bags. Snickering came from somewhere behind them. Aaliyah refused to turn around. The twins moved around Preston and Colton and took the nearest available squat rack. Zarya began loading the bar with deliberate focus, her hands moving quickly and her eyes fixed forward. Alia stood nearby, watching her sister's back. Then Colton walked over. At first, he said nothing. He simply reached out and removed a weight plate from the left side of Zarya's bar, casually, as if it meant nothing, as if the other side of the bar weren't already loaded. The bar tilted violently. Alia's hands shot forward. She caught it before it could swing. The metal felt cold and brutally heavy against her palms. Her arms trembled for only a second before she regained control. Zarya spun around. Her fists were already clenched. Alia stepped between them, not completely in front of her sister, just close enough to place a gentle hand on Zarya's forearm. One touch. A signal they had used since childhood. Wait. Zarya forced air through her nose. Her eyes burned with anger. Around them, students had pulled out their phones. They were filming, not helping, not saying anything, just recording. A few feet away, Preston smirked. Maybe y'all should bounce before this gets embarrassing. Zarya looked past Alia and locked eyes with Colton. Touch my bar again, she said quietly, and you'll regret it. Colton didn't move. For a moment, he simply stood there, wearing a half-smile, apparently deciding whether he should take her seriously. Then he laughed. Regret it? He repeated the words slowly, almost tasting them. You hear that, Preston? Little girls making threats. Preston pushed away from the wall and clapped twice, slowly, mockingly. Cute, he said. Real cute. Alia left her hand on Zarya's arm for another moment before letting go. Then she turned back toward the bar and replaced the weight plate Colton had removed. Her hands remained steady. Her face revealed nothing, but her eyes tracked everything. The twins managed to continue training for another 20 minutes before it became obvious that Preston and Colton were not finished. The two men kept circling them. They continued making comments just loud enough to be heard. Several other gym members laughed along, not because the jokes were particularly funny, but because laughing was easier than getting on the wrong side of people who held influence. Nobody stepped forward. Nobody said, stop, when Alia and Zarya eventually headed toward the auxiliary mat room at the back of the building to work on ground drills. Footsteps followed them. The auxiliary room was smaller. Rubber flooring covered the ground, with blue crash mats spread across most of the space and a row of mirrors stretching along the far wall. No one else was inside when the twins entered. That changed quickly. Preston and Colton followed them in and let the door swing shut behind them. I've been watching you two, Preston said, slowly circling the edge of the mat. And I think you came in here believing you were going to impress somebody. He stopped. His eyes settled directly on Alia. But I don't think you've got what it takes. I think underneath all that attitude, you're soft. Alia placed her bag beside the wall and turned toward him. You can think whatever you want. Preston moved surprisingly fast for a man his size. He crossed the mat in 3 steps and grabbed Alia's wrist, jerking her toward him, as if he intended to prove something in front of everyone watching. His grip was rough. His fingers dug into her skin. His entire body leaned into the strength of the hold. I expected her to pull away, to stumble, to show fear. Alia did none of those things. Instead of retreating, she stepped toward him. Her free hand dropped toward his knee. She sharply pivoted her hip into his body, hooked the back of his leg with her foot, and drove her weight forward. Preston left the ground. I hit the mat hard. The impact produced a flat, brutal sound that echoed through the room. Air exploded from his lungs in a grunt. For several moments, he simply lay there, staring at the ceiling, arms spread wide, completely unable to understand what had just happened to him. The room became silent. Then Colton moved. He went straight for Zarya without hesitation, one arm already swinging. Zarya smoothly slipped to the left. His fist passed within inches of her ear. She caught his extended arm, stepped deep inside his stance, and swept his front leg from beneath him in one clean movement. Colton crashed onto his side. Before he could even process the fall, Zarya was already behind him. She wrapped an arm across the front of his throat and settled her weight against his back with calm, precise control. She wasn't trying to choke him unconscious. She simply held him there, long enough for him to understand exactly how helpless he was. Colton grabbed at her arm with both hands. He accomplished nothing. The room remained completely still. Somebody near the doorway slowly exhaled. Several phones were already raised, eyes wide, mouths open. Finally, a young man near the back wall spoke. Where did you learn that? Zarya didn't even look at him. We fight MMA, she said simply. We're training for a national qualifier. She released Colton and stood. Then, she stepped backward and casually brushed at her sleeve as though the entire encounter had been routine. Colton rolled onto his side, coughing. Preston had managed to sit up. His chest heaved. His jaw was tight. He looked at Alia, then at the phones pointed toward him, then back at Alia. Slowly, he stood. Humiliation covered his face, but something else lurked underneath it. Something colder. Something inside him had been wounded in a way he had never experienced before. He held Alia's gaze. When he spoke, his voice dropped almost to a whisper. You just made the worst mistake of your lives. The bus smelled of rubber and aging upholstery. Alia sat beside the window, watching dark campus buildings slide past outside. Street lights flashed across her face one after another. Zarya sat beside her, scrolling rapidly through her phone. It's everywhere, she said. She tilted the screen toward Alia. The video had already reached 40,000 views and was still climbing. Someone had captured everything. Preston crashing onto the mat. Colton going down. Zarya sliding effortlessly into the chokehold. Comments appeared faster than they could read them. These girls are built different. Preston Hale just got folded by a girl half his size. LMAO. Iron Forge has never seen anything like that. Who are they? Somebody find their names. Zarya let out a short laugh. It wasn't exactly happiness. It was the kind of laugh that came when something felt exciting and frightening at the same time. Alia didn't laugh. She watched the comments pile up and felt hope trying to rise inside her. She allowed herself to feel it for only a moment. Then she pushed it back down. Don't get too comfortable, she said softly. Zarya lowered her phone. Can I enjoy this for 5 minutes first? Enjoy it, Alia said. Just don't trust it. Zarya rested her head against the seat and stared toward the bus ceiling. The fluorescent light above them flickered. Outside, the city passed by in dark storefronts, brightly lit gas stations, and empty sidewalks. Then Zarya's phone buzzed with a notification she didn't recognize. A direct message had arrived from an unfamiliar account. She opened it. Hey, my name is Paige Nolan. I work at Iron Forge. I saw what happened today. I just want you to know that what you did took guts. Preston and Colton have been treating women like this at that gym for months. Pulling weights, blocking equipment, saying disgusting things. Management never did anything. Nobody ever pushed back before. Thank you. Zarya read the message twice. Then, without saying anything, she handed the phone to Alia. Alia, read it. Something changed in her expression. She passed the phone back. Save that. Zarya nodded. Already took a screenshot. The bus stop nearest their apartment was only a few blocks from Coach Everett Briggs's gym. Instead of going home, they walked there. The night air felt cool and sharp against their skin. The gym lights were still burning. Through the narrow window beside the door, they could see Coach Briggs's silhouette moving slowly between the equipment. He already knew. Of course he did. He handed each twin a bottle of water, then sat on the edge of the platform beneath a heavy bag and crossed his arms. Coach Briggs had the kind of face that never wasted expressions. Every line in it seemed to mean something. "Saw the video," he said. "Then you saw they started it," Zarya replied. "I saw that." He paused. "I also saw the look on that boy's face after he got up." Alia sat on the bench against the wall. "We handled it clean, Coach. No cheap shots. We didn't even finish the chokes." "I know." Coach Briggs looked steadily at her. "That isn't what worries me." The gym was silent, except for the hum of the old wall unit and distant traffic outside. "Boys like that," Coach Briggs said slowly, "with money behind them and people being paid to protect them, they don't lose quietly. Ever. Not in public. Not on camera." He paused. "That video is already embarrassing powerful people, and powerful people don't sit around feeling embarrassed." His eyes hardened. "They move." Neither twin spoke. Coach Briggs looked at both of them. "I'm proud of you. I want you to understand that. But I need you to be ready, because whatever comes next isn't going to look like a fair fight." I was right. The praise on campus began disappearing almost immediately. Posts celebrating the twins were removed. Discussion threads that had been filled with supportive comments were deleted or locked. Alia noticed first, while sitting at the small kitchen table with her laptop. She stared at the screen. Then her phone vibrated. Zarya's buzzed almost immediately afterward. A formal university email. Official letterhead. Subject: Notice of misconduct. Investigation. Student conduct. Code violation. Zarya emerged from the bedroom, still half asleep, holding her phone as she read the same message. Her expression slowly tightened. She looked toward Alia. Alia looked back. For a moment, neither spoke. The university accused both sisters of initiating an unprovoked physical assault against 2 student athletes on university property. The complaint cited witness statements. It also warned that their campus privileges could be suspended while the matter was formally reviewed. "Witness statements," Zarya said flatly. "From who?" Alia slowly closed her laptop. "Whoever Preston paid to remember what happened differently." Dean Camille Whitford's office occupied the 3rd floor of the administration building. Tall windows filled the room with light. Framed certificates covered the walls. The furniture looked as though nobody had ever dared sit in it too heavily. Everything about the office delivered the same message. Important things happened here, and they happened according to the person behind the desk. Dean Whitford sat in a dark blazer with her hands folded neatly in front of her. Her reading glasses rested on top of her head. She looked at the twins the way someone looks at a problem they have already decided how to solve. She allowed the silence to linger before speaking. "I want to make it very clear that this office takes every misconduct report seriously." Her voice remained perfectly even, regardless of circumstance, regardless of who is involved. Zarya's jaw tightened. Alia kept her face still. "Based on the initial report and the statements provided," Whitford continued, unnecessarily straightening a sheet. Straightening a sheet of paper on her desk. "We are required to act immediately in order to protect the safety of all students while the investigation takes place." She looked directly at them. "Your access to Iron Forge Athletic Club is suspended effective immediately, pending the outcome of the review." Dean Whitford folded her hands and smiled. It was a carefully constructed smile, the kind that never reached the eyes. The kind someone practiced until it looked real enough to use on other people, I want both of you to understand that this office is committed to a fair and thorough process. Ayalia sat straight-backed with her hands resting on her knees. Zarya sat beside her, one leg bouncing beneath the table. Neither returned the smile. "We have questions," Alia said. "Of course." Whitford opened a thin folder. She glanced at it like someone looking at something already memorized. "The report states that one of your fellow students was thrown onto the ground. That is extremely serious." "He grabbed my wrist first," Alia replied. Her voice was calm and clear. "That's on video, several videos." Whitford gave a patient little nod. "We are aware that footage is circulating. Our office is reviewing all available material." "Then you already saw Colton remove the weight from my bar while I was lifting," Zarya said. An edge sharpened her voice. "You saw that too, right?" Whitford paused, only briefly, but long enough for them to notice. "The report we received specifically addresses the physical altercation that followed. What happened before that," she continued, "is part of the broader review." Zarya stared at her. "So the part where he almost dropped a loaded bar on me doesn't matter, but the part where my sister defended herself does." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." Dean Whitford's smile remained exactly where it was, perfectly fixed, almost painted on to her face. Alia leaned slightly forward. "We'd like to see the witness statements mentioned in the complaint. Those are confidential at this stage of the process." "Confidential from us," Zarya said, "but not from the people who wrote them. Several students have expressed that they feel unsafe coming forward publicly." Whitford allowed the words to hang in the air, as though they explained everything. Alia studied her. She already knew the answer to the question she was about to ask. She asked anyway. "Unsafe from who exactly?" Whitford closed the folder. "I understand this is frustrating. I truly do. But until our investigation is complete, your suspension from the facility will remain in effect." Then she stood. It was her way of ending the conversation without actually saying the meeting was over. "We hope to resolve this quickly." Outside Iron Forge, Preston and Colton were waiting. They weren't inside training. They weren't even pretending. They simply stood near the entrance with their arms crossed, as though they owned the doorway. Preston held up his phone and recorded with a lazy half-smile. Colton laughed at something he said. Campus security stood beside Alia and Zarya, while informing them, formally and clearly, that they were not permitted to enter. Preston watched everything, with the satisfied expression of someone watching a show whose ending he already knew. He never said a word. I didn't need to. Coach Briggs listened without interrupting. He sat inside the cramped back office of his gym, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped together. The fluorescent light above him flickered. A speed bag echoed from the other room. When Alia finished explaining everything, Coach Briggs remained silent for a moment. "Without certified training hours, documented at an approved facility," he finally said, "the qualifier committee can revoke your eligibility. It's written into the registration terms." He looked at them. "You knew that." "We know," Alia replied. Coach Briggs rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm going to make some calls, see what I can do." But his voice lacked the confidence his words were trying to project. When the twins returned home, their mother's medical bill was sitting on the kitchen table. She had left it there without saying anything. Somehow, the silence made it worse. The thick envelope had already been opened, several pages protruding from inside. Alia picked it up. She looked at the total printed at the bottom. Then she placed it back down. Their mother was in the next room, watching television at low volume, pretending she wasn't thinking about the exact same number. Zarya's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Their landlord. She already knew what the message would say. Final notice. Rent 3 weeks past due. Pay in full by Friday, or we begin the removal process. Zarya read it twice. Then, she placed the phone face down on the counter. Without saying anything, she walked out of the apartment. Alia heard her footsteps moving quickly down the stairwell. She found her one floor below. Zarya had one fist pressed hard against the wall. She wasn't pulling it back. She wasn't punching. She simply held it there, as though she were trying to keep the wall standing, or trying to keep herself together. The difference between those two things had disappeared. Her shoulders trembled. When Alia came closer, she realized Zarya was crying, not loudly. Zarya never cried loudly. The tears came in short, tight breaths, as though she were fighting them the same way she fought everything else, and losing anyway. Zarya. Her sister's voice broke on a single word. Don't. She kept her face toward the wall. Alia stood beside her. She didn't touch her yet. She simply stood close enough to let Zarya know she wasn't alone. This isn't about the gym anymore, Zarya whispered. Her voice was raw around the edges. It stopped being about the gym. She swallowed. It's the bills, Mom, the apartment. It's everything, Alia. Everything at once. Finally, she turned around. Her eyes were red. Tears covered her cheeks. Her chest rose and fell, as though simply standing upright required all the strength she had left. We can't afford to lose this fight. Her voice cracked. We literally cannot afford to lose. She pressed her fist against the wall again, hard. The sound echoed through the empty stairwell. Then, Zarya slid down until she was sitting on the cold floor, back against the wall, knees pulled toward her chest. Alia sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder. The stairwell was quiet. Just the two of them beneath dim lights, with everything they carried pressing down on them at once. The heavy bag swung violently to one side. Zarya drove a round kick into it. The impact cracked through Coach Briggs' little gym like a gunshot. Again, he said. He stood in the center of the mat with his arms crossed. Gray stubble covered his jaw. A stopwatch hung from his neck, though he hadn't checked it once. I didn't need to. Coach Briggs seemed able to feel time the way some people felt storms approaching. Zarya kicked again, harder. The chain holding the bag groaned against the ceiling bolt. Again. She kicked. Again. And again. Each strike sounded louder than the last. Every blow carried something that had nothing to do with technique. Stop. Zarya didn't. She threw another kick, then followed with a three-punch combination that folded the bag inward. Zarya, stop. One more hook. Then she lowered her hands. She stood breathing hard. Sweat ran down her temples. Her wraps were dark with moisture. Coach Briggs walked toward her slowly. I was 58 years old. His knees no longer worked the way they once had. His left shoulder clicked whenever he raised his arm above his head, but when he moved across a mat, something dangerous remained in him, something that remembered every fight he had ever survived. He stopped in front of Zarya. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't disappointed. It was simply honest. What were you hitting? Zarya wiped her face with her forearm. The bag? No. Coach Briggs looked at her. You were hitting Preston Hale. You were hitting Colton Vance. You were hitting Dean Whitford. You were hitting the landlord, and those bills sitting on your kitchen counter. He gently tapped the heavy bag with one finger. This thing doesn't fight back. His eyes narrowed. They do. He paused. And if you carry rage into a cage against someone who fights back, you will lose every single time. Zarya looked toward the floor. Across the room, Alia completed her drills on the ground mat. Shrimp drills, hip escapes, guard transitions, everything precise, everything controlled. Her breathing remained steady. Her face remained focused. Whatever she carried inside, she kept it contained behind technique. Coach Briggs pointed toward her. Your sister is angry too. You know that, right? Zarya looked over. She's every bit as angry as you are. But she's choosing where she puts it. He turned back toward Zarya. Discipline wins wars that arrogance starts. His voice softened. That isn't just some quote I hung on the wall. It's the truth about fighting, about life, about everything." Zarya slowly nodded. For once, she didn't argue. "Run the combination again," Coach Briggs said. "Jab, cross, lead hook, switch kick." Hai demonstrated with his hands. Smooth, controlled, like you're painting a picture instead of tearing one apart. Zarya planted her feet. She exhaled. Then she ran the combination again. Slower, sharper. Every strike landed exactly where it belonged, instead of wherever her emotions wanted to drag it. Coach Briggs watched. He gave one small nod. Nothing more. Praise from Everett Briggs was rare. "You earned it through consistency, not flashes of talent." Alia rose from the mat and rolled her shoulders. She grabbed a towel from a metal folding chair and wiped her neck. The gym was tiny. 3 heavy bags. 1 speed bag attached to a plywood board. A ground mat beginning to peel at the corners. A wall of mirrors with a long crack crossing the second panel. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled of aging rubber, sweat, and something deeper. Something that seemed to live inside every real gym where people came hoping to become better than they had been the day before. The place had been their second home since they were 15. Their father's friend had built it with his own hands after retiring from professional fighting. Every wall carried a memory. Every mark on the mat contained a lesson. And the gym itself was barely surviving. Coach Briggs had never mentioned it. But Aaliyah had noticed the overdue electric bill taped beside the office door. She noticed the bucket catching water from the leaking ceiling. She noticed that half the lights in the back hallway no longer worked. Everyone was drowning. They were simply drowning at different depths. The front door opened. All 3 turned at once. Coach Briggs instinctively moved slightly forward, placing himself between the door and the twins. A young woman stood in the entrance. She was short, perhaps 5'3", with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail. A messenger bag crossed her body. Her glasses sat slightly crooked on her nose. She wore jeans and a plain gray jacket. Her eyes moved rapidly around the gym, absorbing details the way a reporter did, cataloging everything before anyone had a chance to hide it. "We're closed," Coach Briggs said. "I know." The woman stepped inside and shut the door. "That's why I came now. I didn't want anybody seeing me walk in." Zarya looked toward Alia. Alia looked at Coach Briggs. "Who are you?" Alia asked. "My name is Lila Moreno. I'm a journalism student at the university." She nervously adjusted the strap of her bag. Her voice, however, remained steady. "I've been investigating Preston Hale and the athletic department for 6 months." The name landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Coach Briggs didn't move. Investigating what? Lila walked farther into the gym but stopped at the edge of the mat. She didn't step onto it. Without being told, she somehow seemed to understand that the mat was sacred ground there. "I've been pulling records, interviewing former students, and filing information requests with the administration." She looked directly at Alia. "You aren't the first people Preston has done this to." She paused. "You aren't even close." Zarya stepped forward. "Then why hasn't anybody done anything?" Lila's jaw tightened. "Because every time somebody files a complaint, it disappears. Every time a student speaks up, they're pressured into silence, threatened with academic probation, told their scholarship depends on cooperation." She looked between the twins. "Preston's father gives more than $2 million a year to the university athletic program. Football facilities, training equipment, coaching salaries." Her expression hardened. "His money touches everything." Layla continued. "And Dean Whitford has made it her personal mission to keep that money flowing, no matter what it costs." Alia felt her stomach tighten. She had suspected something like this inside Whitford's office. The way the dean's eyes had avoided the truth. The way she had rephrased every fact until the twins became the problem. But hearing names and numbers spoken so plainly changed everything. The situation suddenly felt larger, heavier. "How many complaints?" Alia asked. Lila opened her messenger bag. She removed a thick manila folder with worn edges, secured by a rubber band. Written across the front in black marker were 3 words: Hale cover-ups. She handed it over. 7 formal complaints in 2 years. Lila began counting them. 3 from women who said Preston harassed them at the gym. 2 from male students who said Colton physically assaulted them during pickup basketball games. 1 from a teaching assistant who reported that Preston threatened her after she refused to change his grade. And 1 from a former teammate who attempted to report steroid use inside the football locker room. Her voice became quieter, not because she was frightened, because the weight of what she was saying demanded it. Every single complaint was buried. No hearings, no discipline, nothing in Preston's official file. Alia removed the rubber band. Inside were printed emails, screenshots from deleted campus discussions, scanned complaint forms stamped, resolved, no action, and handwritten notes in Lila's careful handwriting, linking dates, names, and incidents. Zaria read over her sister's shoulder. With every page, her expression changed. The anger Coach Briggs had spent so long calming was returning. But this time it wasn't wild. It was cold. "Why us?" Alia asked. She looked up from the folder. "Why bring all this to us?" Lila met her eyes without flinching. "Because you're the first people who fought back and didn't disappear." She took a breath. "You're the first ones with video proving Preston started it. And you're the first people the entire campus actually saw standing up to him." Lila continued. "Everyone else was silenced before anybody noticed. But people already know your names. If we build a real case, something outside the university's internal review system, they won't be able to make you vanish." Coach Briggs looked at the folder in Alia's hands. His expression was unreadable. He had lived long enough to understand that fighting powerful people often meant losing nearly everything before you won anything. "This could blow up in their faces," he said slowly. Then he looked at Lila, "or yours." But if nobody acts, Preston Hale graduates in 18 months, walks straight into his father's money, and everyone he hurts afterward becomes part of the price of everybody else staying silent. The gym fell quiet. Alia looked down at the folder. Near the back was a screenshot of an email from Dean Whitford to the university's legal department. The subject line read, Hale complaint. Recommend immediate closure. No findings. The message concerned a girl who said Preston had grabbed her arm so violently that he left bruises. Alia closed the folder. She held it against her chest. Now she understood. What had happened inside Iron Forge wasn't simply 2 bullies harassing new gym members. It was only the newest chapter in something that had been happening for years. The gym confrontation had merely opened a door. What lay behind it was far darker. The campus felt gray and cold when Alia and Zaria returned, the kind of atmosphere that felt like a warning. They kept their heads high. They had already agreed on the bus. No reactions. No giving anyone a reason to point another camera toward them. They had been suspended from Iron Forge, but they were still enrolled students. Nobody had the legal authority to prevent them from attending class. That didn't mean people wouldn't try to make them feel unwelcome. Whispers began before they reached the main building. A group of students near the front steps suddenly went quiet as they passed. One girl turned her phone away too quickly. Alia still caught a glimpse. A post on the campus forum. Only 3 words were visible. Carter, girls violent. Alia kept walking. Inside the hallway, Zarya grabbed her sleeve and pulled her aside. She raised her phone. She had been reading the posts ever since they got off the bus. Several fake accounts had appeared overnight. One post claimed Alia had been caught cheating on a kinesiology exam and that a professor had covered for her. Another described both twins as attention-seeking clout girls who had deliberately staged the Iron Forge confrontation to build a social media following. The third was worse. It included a blurry image of Zarya during the takedown and described her as dangerous and mentally unstable, claiming she had a history of violence against other students. None of it was true. Every word was a lie disguised as concern. Alia stared at the posts silently. Her jaw tightened. She recognized the strategy. This wasn't random gossip. Someone had carefully considered which lies would cause the most damage. Someone had deliberately designed them to sound believable. "How many people shared them?" Alia asked. "Enough," Zarya replied flatly. They headed toward class. At the far end of the hallway, a campus security guard appeared. I wasn't responding to an incident. He simply stood there, watching them. When they moved toward the stairwell, he followed from a distance close enough to make his presence obvious. "They've got security babysitting us now," Zarya muttered. "Don't look at him," Alia said. "That's what they want. A reaction, a photo, another post." They climbed the stairs without speaking. The second hallway was more crowded. Students flowed between classes. Alia and Zarya stayed close together, their shoulders almost touching. Then Colton appeared. He came quickly from the left, pretending not to notice them, but his eyes were already fixed on Zarya. As he passed, he slammed his shoulder hard into hers. It wasn't accidental. It was calculated. Zarya stumbled one step sideways. Colton leaned close as he continued walking, lowering his voice barely above a whisper. "I know your address, sweetheart." He smiled. "Nice neighborhood for a couple of broke girls." I kept moving. Preston stood near a row of lockers only 10 feet away. He had watched everything. When Colton passed, Preston smiled and looked casually down at his phone, as though nothing had occurred, as though he were just another student, minding his own business. Zarya spun around. Alia grabbed her arm, hard. "No." Her voice was low and sharp. "Not here, not now." "He just threatened us," Zarya said through clenched teeth. "I know." Alia tightened her grip. "Walk." Zarya walked, but every muscle in her body had gone rigid. Her breathing came in short bursts through her nose. Alia kept hold of her until they passed through the doors and reached the outside. The security guard was no longer following them. I didn't need to. Colton had already accomplished what he was supposed to. They sat through class as though everything were normal. Alia took notes. Zarya stared at her desk and wrote nothing. The professor spoke about muscle recovery and the science of inflammation. Normally, Alia would have found the subject fascinating. That day, the words simply floated past her. After their final class, the sisters headed toward the student parking lot. Lila was already waiting. She stood several feet from their car, holding up her phone and photographing something. Then they saw it. All 4 tires were flat. Not from slow leaks. Not bad luck. The front driver's side tire had been sliced open in one long diagonal cut. The kind of cut made by someone deliberately dragging a knife through rubber. Zarya stopped at the edge of the parking lot and stared. Lila lowered her phone. "I got here about 15 minutes ago. I noticed it while cutting through the lot, so I texted you." She looked carefully toward Zarya, almost the way someone looks at a lit match they're afraid to approach. "I photographed all 4 tires and the parking lot camera." She pointed toward a pole near the entrance. "But the camera angle ends at the 2nd row. Their car was parked in the 3rd. Whoever did this knew exactly where they'd be outside the camera's view. Of course they did, Zarya said. Her voice was disturbingly quiet. That frightened Alia more than yelling would have. Lila had spoken to 2 students who had been in the parking lot around the relevant period. One claimed she had seen nothing. The other simply walked away in the middle of Lila's question, staring straight ahead as though Lila hadn't been speaking. "Nobody is going to talk," Lila said. "Not while Preston's name is attached to this. Not openly." She looked at Alia. "But I have photos and timestamps. The parking lot access logs might show who entered this section." Alia nodded slowly. Her mind had already begun organizing what they possessed and what they still needed. She looked at the ruined tires. Anger sat deep inside her stomach like a stone, heavy, still, not boiling, just waiting. Then she looked toward her sister. Zarya hadn't moved. She was staring at the tires with both hands clenched at her sides. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. Her eyes glistened, not from sadness, pure rage. The trembling kind that builds after too many blows arrive from too many directions in too little time. The fake posts, the security guard, Colton, whispering their address into her ear. And now the tires. "Zarya." Alia stepped closer. "Look at me." Zarya continued staring at the car. "Zarya." Finally, her sister turned. Her jaw worked, as though she were grinding broken glass between her teeth. Alia held her gaze. "We need evidence." She paused. "Not revenge." Zarya looked back at the tires. Her entire body trembled. It wasn't the cold. The weather had begun to warm. This shaking came from somewhere far deeper. It was what happened when a person had absorbed too much pain and had nowhere left to put it. Later, Iron Forge sat silent beneath the Student Recreation Center. Paige Nolan waited beside the entrance with keys in her hand. She looked nervous. "You've got maybe 20 minutes, she told the twins. "Night security doesn't start making rounds down here until later. But I can't promise nobody else will show up." Alia nodded. "We just need our gear from the lockers. And maybe to look around," Zarya added. Paige looked between them. "Listen, I believe you. But if anyone asks, I never saw you here. I could lose my job for this." "We understand," Alia said. "Thank you." The empty gym felt different. The overhead lights had been dimmed, casting long shadows between machines. Their footsteps echoed across polished concrete. Alia headed toward the front desk to collect workout journals they had left behind. Zarya walked toward the women's locker room. Then Colton stepped from behind a squat rack. I wasn't alone. 2 football players stood beside him. Both were larger than he was. Both grinned, as though somebody had just told them the funniest joke they had ever heard. One already had his phone raised and recording. "Well, well," Colton said. His voice carried through the empty room. "Look who's trespassing after hours." Zarya stopped. The 3 men completely blocked the path to the locker room. "We're not trespassing. Paige let us inside." "Paige isn't supposed to let suspended students into the facility," Colton replied. He raised his own phone. The recording light blinked, especially violent ones. At the front desk, Alia heard voices. She looked up from the journals. "You know what I think?" Colton continued as he moved closer to Zarya. "I think you 2 came here to cause more trouble. Maybe break equipment. Maybe hurt somebody." "I'm here to get my things and leave," Zarya said. Her voice remained steady, though Alia could hear the tension underneath it. She started moving toward them. Her sneakers squeaked against the floor. "That isn't what it looks like to me," one football player said. "Looks like she's threatening us, Colton." "Yeah," said the other. "Real threatening behavior." Colton smiled. "Good thing we're recording everything for evidence." Zarya's hands tightened into fists. "Get out of my way." "Or what?" Colton stepped closer. Now he was near enough to touch her. Near enough to lower his voice, so the microphones wouldn't clearly capture the words. "What exactly are you going to do?" He leaned closer. "Hit me." His smile widened. "Go ahead. I'm begging you." Alia started walking faster. Then Colton raised his voice again. "She's getting aggressive, guys. Really hostile." "Move," Zarya said through clenched teeth. "Make me." Colton's hand suddenly shot forward. The slap cracked across Zarya's face. The sound echoed through the empty gym like a gunshot. Her head snapped sideways. Her cheek immediately turned bright red. She stumbled backward, not from the strength of the blow as much as the shock. The football players kept filming. Colton grinned. "Oops, self-defense." Zarya's entire body locked. Every muscle tightened like a compressed spring. Her breathing became sharp and shallow. Her right hand instinctively pulled back. A fist formed, ready to drive straight into Colton's smiling face. But she didn't swing. She stood there trembling with rage, cheek burning, fist drawn back, and did nothing. "Come on," Colton taunted. "Hit me back." Zarya's fist shook. Her entire arm shook, but she held it there, through sheer force of will. "She's threatening us," one football player loudly announced for the camera. "Look how aggressive she is." Then Alia reached them. "Get away from her." "Oh, good," Colton said. "The other one's here." His smile widened. "Now we can get both of you on camera being violent." Footsteps suddenly thundered through the stairwell. Several people were approaching quickly. Campus security officers appeared in the doorway, radios crackling. "We received a report of a disturbance," the lead guard called. Preston appeared behind them. His concerned expression looked like something he had practiced in front of a mirror. "Thank God you're here," he said. "These girls broke in and attacked my friends." The security officers surveyed the scene. Colton filming, the two football players filming. Zarya standing with the clenched fist still partially raised, her cheek red from the slap. "Ma'am," the lead officer said, "I need you to lower your hand." Zarya stared at him like she didn't understand. "Now, ma'am." Slowly, she lowered her fist. Her entire body continued trembling. The setup was obvious. The timing was too perfect. The cameras had already been running when security arrived. But obvious didn't matter when the word of 3 football players was being weighed against 2 students who had already been suspended. Later, inside the passenger seat of Coach Briggs's pickup truck, Zarya finally fell apart. She had held herself together during security questioning, during Preston's fake concern, during Colton's lies, during Dean Whitford's phone call accusing her of creating another disturbance. But inside the dark cab of the truck, she broke. "I should have hit him," she sobbed. "I should have knocked his teeth out." Coach Briggs drove slowly, giving her space. "He slapped me in front of those cameras, and I just stood there like..." She couldn't finish. "Like a coward." "You showed discipline," Alia said from the middle seat. "No." Zarya violently shook her head. "Discipline would have meant not going there at all." Her shoulders heaved. "What I showed was weakness. I froze when it mattered." Her voice cracked. "He put his hands on me and I did nothing. Nothing. What kind of fighter am I?" The question hung inside the dark truck like smoke. Thick, poisonous. Street lights flashed steadily across the windows, marking distance but offering no answers. Zarya buried her face in her hands and cried. Later, inside Coach Briggs' office, the air smelled of old leather and sweat. Papers were stacked chaotically across the desk. Fight posters from the 1990s hung crooked on the walls. A fluorescent light buzzed above 4 people gathered around a folding table. Lila Moreno opened her laptop. Beside it, she placed a thick manila folder. Her hands trembled slightly as she spread the documents across the table. "What I'm about to show you changes everything," she said. "This isn't just about gym bullying anymore." Alia leaned closer. Zarya sat with her arms folded, still burning with anger from the setup at Iron Forge. Coach Briggs poured coffee from a thermos. His weathered face remained serious. Lila opened a bank statement. Preston Hale isn't simply some rich football player throwing his weight around. She looked at them. He's running an underground betting operation using university athletes. She pointed toward highlighted numbers. Look at these deposits. 15,000 here, 22,000 there. All cash, all undocumented. Betting on what? Coach Briggs asked. Everything. Football games, basketball, wrestling. Lila changed documents. But the biggest money comes from fixed results. She continued. Athletes throw games, fake injuries, deliberately miss critical plays. Preston takes bets from off-campus gamblers who believe they're receiving inside information. Alia stared at the screen. How do you know? I've been investigating corruption in the athletic program for months. Lila's voice hardened. Preston and Colton aren't just bullies. She looked directly at them. They're criminals. Then she opened another file. And they're using drugs to manipulate the outcomes. She showed photographs of vials and syringes. Performance enhancers when an athlete needs to win. Muscle relaxants and sedatives when somebody needs to lose. Colton handles distribution. Preston controls the money. Zaria finally spoke. What does any of that have to do with us? Dean Whitford knows everything. Lila pulled out printed emails. She deleted complaints, buried assault reports, and covered up failed drug tests, all to protect the donations coming from Preston's father. Coach Briggs read the emails. His jaw tightened. How much money? Preston's family has contributed more than $2 million over the past 3 years. Lila's voice became bitter. Whitford will do anything to keep that money coming in, including allowing Preston and Colton to terrorize female students. She opened another file. There was a student last semester, Kiara Santos. Lila's expression hardened. Preston cornered her at a party and assaulted her. When she reported it, Whitford buried the complaint. She paused. Kiara transferred to another school to get away from him. The room fell silent, except for the fluorescent buzz overhead. Alia felt sick. You can prove all this? Some of it. Lila closed the laptop. Bank records, emails, witness statements. But I need something undeniable. She looked at the twins. A confession. Original video, direct financial evidence. What kind of confession? Zaria asked. Preston or Colton, admitting to the gambling, steroid operation, or assaults. Lila's eyes stayed fixed on them. Something recorded. Something the police can't ignore regardless of Dean Whitford's influence. Coach Briggs placed his coffee cup down hard. These boys aren't bullies. His jaw tightened. They're predators. Exactly, Lila replied. And Whitford protects them. She began gathering her documents. The harassment at the how they tested boundaries. When you fought back, you became a threat to their entire operation. Alia finally understood why Preston had looked so furious after being thrown to the floor. It had never really been about embarrassment. It was about control. So what do we do? Zaria asked. Lila looked straight at her. We expose them. Then she paused. But it has to be perfect. Her voice grew firm. One mistake, one uncontrolled reaction, and they'll turn the entire story around and make you look like the criminals. Alia slowly nodded. I'll help you get what you need. Then she looked toward her sister. The mark from Colton's slap was still visible. But Zaria promised me something. Zaria met her eyes. When we make our move, stay disciplined. Alia's voice was firm. One uncontrolled punch could destroy everything. Lila's article soon spread across every campus news feed and social media platform. The headline read, University Athletic Program Linked to Gambling, Steroids, and covered-up assaults. Alia repeatedly refreshed her phone, watching the view count rise. Students began adding their own stories about Preston and Colton. Deleted screenshots reappeared. Photographs of bruises surfaced. Threatening messages were shared publicly. "Look at this," Zarya said. She showed her sister a video of students gathering outside Iron Forge. "They're actually protesting." The crowd continued growing. Signs demanded justice for victims. Others demanded accountability from the university administration. Students chanted outside the athletic facility. Local television vans appeared on campus. Preston's local protein supplement sponsorship was terminated. The company publicly announced that it was distancing itself from any athlete under investigation. Colton's Instagram account vanished, along with the TikTok videos he had used to mock other students. Dean Whitford called an emergency press conference. Standing behind a podium, bearing the university seal, she spoke in measured tones about transparency and student safety. "We take every allegation seriously and have launched a comprehensive internal review," she announced. "This administration remains committed to the highest ethical standards." Alia watched the live stream with Coach Briggs. Whitford's words sounded supportive. Her eyes looked cold and calculating. "She's protecting herself," Coach Briggs muttered. But the pressure might finally force her hand. Lila called with more news. 3 additional victims had come forward with similar stories about Preston. "The police are finally asking questions Whitford can't deflect." Momentum seemed unstoppable. Students approached Alia and Zarya between classes and offered support. Paige messaged them to say several Iron Forge members were threatening to cancel their memberships unless Preston and Colton were banned. "Your suspension hearing has been moved up," Coach Briggs told them. "If Whitford lifts the suspension, we can still get your qualifier paperwork submitted." For the first time, hope felt real. That evening, Alia and Zarya ate dinner with their mother inside their small apartment kitchen. The medical bills remained on the counter, but the atmosphere felt lighter. "I'm proud of you girls," their mother said, squeezing both their hands. "Your father would be proud too. You stood up when it mattered." Zarya actually smiled. Maybe things are finally changing. Alia felt tension begin to leave her shoulders. The article was working. People were listening. Justice finally seemed possible. Across town, Preston sat inside his expensive apartment, staring at Lila's article on his phone. His jaw tightened as he read comments describing him as a predator and demanding his arrest. Colton paced behind him, panicking over deleted social media accounts and lost sponsorships. When Preston finally spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "Burn the source." A phone call jolted Alia awake. Coach Briggs' voice came through the speaker, rough with panic and smoke. "The gym's on fire." His words came quickly. "Everything's burning. Get down here." Alia's blood went cold. She woke Zarya. They threw on clothes and rushed through nearly empty streets as orange light glowed against the sky. They could smell the smoke from several blocks away. Fire trucks surrounded Coach Briggs's gym. Flames erupted through the roof, while firefighters aimed powerful streams of water toward the building. The front windows had already shattered. Glass covered the sidewalk like broken stars. "Where's Coach?" Zarya shouted over the sirens. A paramedic pointed toward an ambulance. Everett Briggs sat on a stretcher with an oxygen mask over his face. His eyes were red and watering, but he was conscious. When he saw the twins, he tried to pull off the mask. "All the records," he gasped. "Your qualifier paperwork, training logs." His voice broke. "Everything's gone." Alia's heart sank as she watched decades of Coach Briggs's life disappear into smoke and ash. The heavy bags where she had learned her first combinations. The mats where Zarya had practiced kicks. The office where their father had signed their first training contracts before his death. "Sir, keep the mask on," the paramedic insisted. "Smoke inhalation can be serious." The fire chief approached as the ambulance doors closed. "You girls know him. He's our trainer," Alia replied. "What happened?" The fire began in the back storage room. His expression became grim. Accelerant was used. He looked toward the burning structure. "This wasn't an accident. We'll investigate, but the building is a total loss." Zarya stared toward the collapsing roof. Who would do this? But Alia already knew. The timing was too perfect. Lila's article had been gaining momentum. Dean Whitford had been forced into damage control. Preston and Colton were beginning to lose the protection surrounding them. Desperate people did desperate things. The twins followed the ambulance to the hospital. Doctors kept Coach Briggs under observation. His lungs needed time to recover from the smoke. I would survive. The gym would not. Then everything became worse. A new video from Colton began spreading across campus. The footage contained carefully edited clips from the Iron Forge incident. Colton's slap had been removed. So had his taunting words. The result made it appear as though Zarya had cornered him and threatened violence for no reason. The editing was professional. Colton appeared genuinely frightened because every piece of context had been removed. Zarya now looked like the aggressor, a dangerous student-athlete targeting innocent people. "Lies," she whispered, as she watched her own image transformed into someone she barely recognized. "Every second of this is a lie." The comment section exploded. Students who had supported the twins suddenly began calling them frauds and bullies. The narrative reversed completely. Dean Whitford acted immediately. Alia and Zarya received formal suspension notices, barring them from all university facilities until a disciplinary review was completed. Then, the MMA Qualifier Committee revoked their invitation until the misconduct allegations were resolved. Their future seemed to disappear in a single afternoon. That evening, Alia and Zarya sat on the curb outside the burned ruins of Coach Briggs's gym. Smoke still drifted from the collapsed roof. Their clothes smelled of ash and defeat. Emergency tape fluttered in the wind. Students passed without making eye contact. The same people who had once celebrated videos of the twins taking Preston and Colton down now whispered about manipulated footage and aggressive behavior. Preston and Colton had destroyed nearly everything that mattered. "They took everything," Zarya whispered. Alia stared toward the charred walls of the gym where she had learned to fight, the place where her father had taught her that true strength meant protecting what you loved. The weight of failure pressed down on her chest, but something remained inside her. Something nobody could burn, nobody could edit, nobody could suspend. "Not everything," Alia said quietly. She looked at Zarya. "They forgot we're still breathing." Lila Moreno sat hunched over her laptop in her dorm room, scrolling through hours of archived livestream footage. Her eyes burned from staring at the screen. She refused to stop. Somewhere inside Colton's enormous digital footprint had to be the evidence they needed. Colton was careless with technology. He streamed everything: workouts, parties, random walks across campus. He constantly craved attention and validation. Most of the content was meaningless, but Lila suspected his ego had accidentally captured something important. She began reviewing an archived stream from his dorm room. Colton had been showing viewers his expensive gaming setup and bragging about handling problems. The video quality was poor. He repeatedly wandered in and out of frame while speaking on the phone. Lila almost missed it. Colton moved away from his computer while the live stream continued. His phone conversation became audible in the background as he paced beside the window. Lila increased the volume. Then she heard him clearly. "Preston, are you sure about this? Burning the gym seems extreme." Lila froze. She rewound the recording, listened again. Preston's voice was quieter through the phone speaker, but unmistakable. "We had to destroy Briggs's gym before nationals. That old fool was going to help them qualify no matter what," Whitford said. "Now they've got nothing." Colton laughed. "Cold, satisfied. And my edited footage makes Zarya look like the aggressor." His voice carried clearly. "Perfect timing, bro," Preston answered. "Just make sure that video stays up. Let them try proving it's fake." Lila immediately saved the audio, then made 3 backup copies on separate devices. Her hands shook. She possessed a direct confession to arson and deliberate evidence manipulation, but her word alone wasn't enough. The evidence needed witnesses. Credibility. She called Paige Nolan. Paige arrived quickly, pale but determined. Lila played the recording twice. Paige's anger grew with every word. "Those monsters," she whispered. "They destroyed everything Everett built." "Will you help me make this public?" Lila asked. Paige didn't hesitate. "I'm done being afraid of them." Throughout the week, Lila had quietly contacted other students. 2 young women agreed to meet. Both were former victims of Preston and Colton, who had remained silent out of fear. Kiara Santos, a psychology student, had been cornered by Preston during a fraternity party. Colton had filmed, while Preston made crude remarks about her body. When Kiara tried to report the incident, Dean Whitford claimed the footage was inconclusive. Another student, Hannah Park, described how Colton had stalked her social media accounts for months. He posted humiliating comments and distributed private photographs she had never consented to share. When she sought help, campus security told her to avoid conflict instead of investigating him. Both women had watched what happened to the Carter twins with a terrible sense of recognition. It was the same pattern, the same intimidation, the same silence. "We never had anyone fight back before," Kiara said softly. "Maybe if we stand together now, we can finally make them pay." At Riverside General Hospital, Aaliyah and Zarya sat beside Coach Briggs's bed. His oxygen mask had been removed, though his voice remained rough from smoke inhalation. "I'm sorry we couldn't protect the gym," Aaliyah said. Guilt crushed her chest. Coach Briggs reached into the bedside drawer. He removed a pair of worn leather boxing gloves, deep brown, faded gold laces. "These were mine when I fought amateur. I gave them to Alia. Won 17 straight fights wearing those." The leather felt soft beneath her hands, powerful, as though every disciplined victory still lived inside it. "Justice needs 2 things," Coach Briggs said firmly. "Truth and courage." He looked toward the twins. "Lila has the truth." Then he smiled faintly. "You girls have the courage." His voice hardened. "Time to put them together." Zarya shifted uncomfortably. "Coach, I need to apologize." He looked at her. "I've been wanting revenge instead of justice. I let my anger make me stupid." "Anger isn't stupid if you know how to use it." Coach Briggs turned toward Alia. "You've been carrying anger too. Don't pretend you haven't." Alia looked down at the old gloves. His directness surprised her. "My anger is what kept me standing," she admitted. Then she looked toward her sister. "But Zarya's anger gives her enough courage to fight when I become too cautious. That's why you're twins." Coach Briggs smiled. "You balance each other." Then his eyes sharpened. "Now go balance those boys." Lila prepared to upload the confession. Her heart hammered as she typed the caption. "Colton, Vance, and Preston Hale, confessing to arson and evidence tampering. Listen for yourselves." She published it. Within minutes, the recording spread across every major campus social media platform. Students who had defended Preston and Colton could now hear their own voices, admitting that they had destroyed Coach Briggs's gym and framed Zarya with manipulated footage. Comment sections exploded. The entire campus demanded answers. A charity fight showcase was being held off campus in the old warehouse district. The event was meant to raise money for local youth programs, Amateur fighters, college wrestlers, and martial arts clubs had registered weeks earlier. Preston and Colton had not been invited, but family money had a way of opening doors that should have remained closed. They entered surrounded by football teammates, like a private pack of attack dogs. "This is perfect," Preston said while surveying the crowd of around 200 people. "We show up, look like community heroes, and remind everybody who the real athletes are." Colton pulled out his phone and began live streaming. His follower count had dropped after Lila's audio leak, but enough viewers remained to spread his message. "What's up, everyone?" He grinned into the camera. "We're out here supporting real fighters, not those fraud twins who've been crying victim all week." Preston leaned into the frame. A polished smile covered the rage in his eyes. "Yeah, Alia and Zaria Carter," he laughed. "Where are they now? Hiding behind fake evidence and edited audio. They talk tough online," Colton said, "but they won't show up when there's real competition." He laughed again. "Cowards." Then he added, "They sucker-punched us in the gym when we weren't ready, and started pretending they were professional fighters." His grin widened. "I bet they've never even been in a real sanctioned boot." Comments immediately flooded the live stream. Most defended the twins. Preston and Colton ignored them. Their arrogance fed on itself. "If they're really that tough," Preston continued, "why don't they prove it?" He looked directly into the phone. "Right here, right now," he smiled. "But they won't." His voice turned mocking. "Because they know we'd destroy them in front of everybody." Miles away, Zaria sat among the burned remains of Coach Briggs's gym, watching the live stream on Lila's laptop. Smoke and melted rubber still hung in the air. Burned equipment surrounded them like the skeletons of their dreams. "Look at these idiots," Lila said. Disgust filled her voice. "They're actually bragging after burning down your gym." Alia paced behind them, wearing Coach Briggs's old championship gloves. The leather felt almost warm, alive, as though every fighter who had ever refused to quit had left something inside them. "They think they broke us," Zaria said. Her voice was cold as winter steel. She grabbed Lila's laptop. At first, she began typing into the livestream chat, but words on a screen felt too small, too hidden. Instead, Zaria started her own live stream from the burned interior of the gym. Notifications exploded across campus. Students watching Preston and Colton immediately began switching over. "Preston, Colton." Zaria's voice cut through the phone speaker like a blade. "You want to prove you're real fighters?" She stared into the camera. "Stop talking." Then she said it. "Fight us where everybody can see." The chat erupted. Students began tagging friends and sharing the stream. People demanded that the challenge happen. Alia stepped into the frame beside her sister. "Tonight, at the charity showcase," her voice remained calm. "Sanctioned bouts, referees, medical staff, cameras recording everything," Zaria continued. "No edited footage, no lies." She stared into the lens. "Just you, us, and the truth in front of witnesses." Back inside the warehouse, Preston watched his live stream viewer count collapse as people switched to the twins. His face darkened. Colton laughed. "They actually want to get humiliated in public." His grin returned. "This is better than I hoped." The event promoter, Julian Cross, approached them nervously. "I was a former amateur boxer trying to fund community youth programs through legitimate combat sports events. I heard about the challenge." He looked at them. "My lawyers say that if both parties consent, and we follow athletic commission rules, we can add 2 exhibition bouts." Preston's father had donated money to Julian's youth program. The pressure was immediate, obvious. "The whole campus is watching," Julian continued. "If I refuse to sanction the fights, people will say I'm protecting you." He looked directly at Preston. Looked directly at Preston. But if you don't show up, they'll call you cowards forever. Dean Whitford arrived soon afterward, demanding that the event be cancelled. But thousands of students were already watching streams, sharing the challenge, and heading toward the warehouse. Public pressure had become impossible to contain. "This is a disaster," Whitford told Julian. "If somebody gets seriously injured, the lawsuits could destroy everyone involved." "Then make sure the medical team is good," Julian replied coldly. I had seen Lila's evidence. He had heard the confession. Whatever respect he had once possessed for institutional authority was gone. Ahalia and Zaria arrived wearing matching black fighting shorts and sports tops. Coach Briggs' gym logo appeared across each shirt, 2 gloves touching, a simple image representing respect between fighters. The crowd parted as the twins entered. Some cheered. Others filmed nervously. Everyone seemed to understand they were about to witness something people would discuss for years. Lila followed with her camera ready. Paige Nolan stood near the entrance beside Kiara and Hannah, the 2 women who had finally come forward. Coach Briggs had insisted on leaving the hospital against medical advice. He sat ringside in a wheelchair. An oxygen tank rested beside him. His eyes burned with pride. The warehouse had been transformed into a legitimate fighting venue. 2 regulation cages stood beneath professional lighting. Medical stations were prepared. Licensed referees were present. Julian had called in every favor he could to make the bouts legitimate. Preston and Colton waited near the first cage. Their football teammates surrounded them. They still looked confident, still physically imposing, ready to prove their supposed dominance before the largest audience they had ever faced. Yet something in their expressions had changed. The arrogance remained, but underneath it, uncertainty. The twins didn't look like the women Preston and Colton had first mocked inside Iron Forge. They looked focused, dangerous, like actual fighters. Colton approached the first cage, rolling his shoulders and smiling toward the audience as though the warehouse belonged to him. His eyes found Zaria. "Ready to get embarrassed, princess?" His voice carried across the room. Zaria stepped forward. The warehouse went silent. Colton entered the cage first. He bounced on his toes and flexed for the cameras. His smile was wide and cruel. The cage door slammed shut. Thousands of people seemed to hold their breath as Zaria Carter and Colton Vance faced each other beneath the harsh live stream lights. The professional referee checked both fighters. "Touch gloves if you want to show respect." Colton spat onto the mat. "I don't respect trash." Zaria kept her hands at her sides. Her dark eyes remained fixed on his face. She watched every tiny expression, every movement, every signal Coach Briggs had taught her to recognize in an opponent. "Fight!" Colton exploded forward, not with skill, with raw aggression. He launched a wild haymaker that missed Zaria's head by inches. Then he grabbed the cage fence with one hand to stabilize himself before throwing an illegal elbow. The crowd booed. The referee issued a warning. Zaria circled to the left, light on her feet. Colton chased her like an enraged animal, throwing combinations filled with power but lacking precision. One punch glanced off her shoulder. Then he grabbed the fence again and drove a brutal knee toward her ribs. This one connected. Pain exploded through Zaria's side. She stumbled backward. Copper filled her mouth. Blood appeared along her lip, where she had bitten down to keep herself from crying out. Colton smiled. He raised both arms toward the audience, as though he had already won. "Come on, tough girl," he shouted over the noise. "Where's all that mouth now?" The warehouse erupted into competing chants. Preston's football teammates screamed encouragement. Students supporting the twins booed Colton's dirty tactics. The sound became deafening. Colton pressed forward. Another illegal elbow grazed Zaria's temple. When she stumbled, he grabbed her sports top and shoved her toward the cage. Then he whispered near her ear, "Your daddy's gym burned real nice." The microphones picked up every word. "Too bad your old coach didn't burn with it." White-hot rage flashed behind Zaria's eyes. Her hands clenched, every muscle in her body prepared to explode. No discipline, no thought, no control. Then Coach Briggs' voice cut through the rage. She could see him sitting ringside in the wheelchair, oxygen beside him, his eyes blazing. Discipline beats anger every time. Zaria forced herself to breathe. Reset. Remember. 8 years of training. Colton charged with another wild combination, expecting her to collapse under the pressure. Instead, Zaria slipped left. She chopped a devastating kick into his lead leg. The impact sounded like a baseball bat striking wood. Colton's smile disappeared. He rushed again. Now Zaria had found her rhythm. She slipped his next punch and landed a clean body shot that folded him slightly at the waist. He desperately swung back. She ducked underneath and slammed another kick into his opposite leg. Harder this time. Everybody could see Colton's movement changing. His confident bounce became an awkward shuffle. Every step sent pain through both thighs. "Stand still and fight me," he screamed. Frustration had replaced arrogance. Zaria continued moving, continued attacking his legs, continued making him miss. Every wild punch left him further off balance. Every failure made him angrier, sloppier. The referee briefly stopped the action to examine a cut above Colton's eye after he had crashed face first into the cage while chasing Zaria. During the pause, Colton glared at her. "I'm going to hurt you bad, little girl." His voice dropped. "Then I'm going to find your sister." When the fight resumed, Colton charged like a desperate bull, but desperation had made him careless. He threw a huge overhand right, even after the referee had clearly called for a break to inspect Zaria's lip. The illegal strike was obvious to everyone. The crowd erupted in outrage. Even Preston's teammates looked uncomfortable. But Colton's reckless punch had left him completely exposed. Zaria stepped forward. Then she threw the cleanest head kick of her life. Her shin slammed into Colton's temple. The impact echoed through the warehouse. His eyes rolled upward. His knees collapsed. Colton dropped to the mat like a cut tree. Zaria immediately followed him down. She established side control with textbook precision. Colton tried to buck and roll. His movements were sluggish, disorganized. Zaria smoothly moved into full mount and began landing controlled strikes against his exposed ribs. "Stop!" Colton gasped. "Stop!" He no longer resembled the confident predator who had entered the cage. The referee stepped in. "Fight's over." The warehouse exploded. Students jumped from their seats. Camera flashes lit the building like lightning. Live stream comments poured in by the thousands. Colton lay stunned on the mat, staring toward the ceiling with unfocused eyes. Blood trickled from his nose. His chest rose and fell in panicked breaths. Zaria stood above him slowly. Her own chest heaved, but her expression remained calm, controlled. She looked down at the man who had tormented her, who had helped destroy Coach Briggs's gym, who had tried to ruin her future. "You never owned me," she said quietly. The arena microphones captured every word. Medics carried Colton away on a stretcher while he mumbled incoherently about his head. The crowd remained standing. Energy crackled through the warehouse. Then Preston Hale entered the cage. He looked different from the cocky football star who had first harassed them inside Iron Forge. His shoulders had become wider. His arms were swollen. Veins bulged unnaturally across his neck and forearms. The steroids had transformed his body until it barely looked natural. "Your sister got lucky," Preston said, rolling his enormous shoulders. He looked at Alia. "You won't." Alia touched her gloves together, then centered herself. She had watched Preston's body change. Coach Briggs had warned her about steroid users. Stronger, more aggressive. but also more reckless. Their cardiovascular conditioning often suffered. Their joints became vulnerable. Alia needed only to survive long enough for Preston's artificial strength to fail him. The referee brought them together. "Keep it clean. Protect yourselves at all times." Preston grinned. "I'm going to break every bone in your body." The fight began. Preston launched himself forward like a freight train. His first punch missed Alia's head by inches and slammed into the cage hard enough to shake the structure. His second strike caught her shoulder. The force sent her stumbling backward. He wrapped both arms around her waist and slammed her into the fence with terrifying power. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. Pain shot through her back and ribs. "Not so tough now," Preston roared. He pinned her against the cage. Short, brutal punches hammered into her ribs. Each one felt like a sledgehammer. Alia gasped. Blood filled her mouth. But she had trained for moments like this her entire life. Instead of attempting to escape, she wrapped both arms around Preston's massive torso. She locked her hands behind his back. Then she pulled herself into a tight clinch. Preston now had to carry her entire body weight while she recovered her breath. He tried to throw her off. The clinch neutralized much of his power advantage. He pushed, pulled, twisted. Alia refused to let go. "Get off me," Preston grunted. Seconds passed. His breathing became heavier. The unnatural muscle mass demanded more oxygen than his cardiovascular system could deliver. Sweat poured down his face. Alia felt his grip weakening. She released the clinch and stepped backward. Preston's chest heaved. A cut had opened above Alia's left eye. Blood ran along her cheek, but she remained standing. Preston wiped sweat from his forehead, then charged again. His haymakers were wider now, slower. Alia slipped beneath one enormous punch. She drove a hard uppercut into his exposed ribs. Preston doubled over, gasping. "What's wrong?" Alia asked. She remained calm. "Getting tired already?" Preston's face twisted with rage. "You think you're better than me." His voice carried through the arena microphones. "My family built this university." Then he snarled, "My father owns people like you." The entire audience heard it. Phones captured his face as the polished public image began falling apart. Alia circled away from his increasingly sloppy attacks. Another body shot, then another. Every punch sank deeper into his weakening midsection. "You're nothing," Preston screamed. His voice cracked. "Whitford does whatever my father tells her." Then, exhausted and furious, he said too much. "We burned that gym because we wanted to." The warehouse seemed to freeze. "Nobody can touch me." Live stream comments exploded. Students looked at one another in disbelief. Preston was confessing in front of everyone. Thousands were watching. Preston staggered forward, exhausted, desperate. Alia stepped to the side. She caught his arm, used his momentum against him. Preston crashed onto the mat. All traces of athletic grace disappeared. Alia immediately took his back. Her legs hooked around his waist. Her arm slid beneath his chin. She locked in the rear naked choke Coach Briggs had drilled into her thousands of times. "No," Preston thrashed. "Get off me." I was trapped. The choke tightened. His face turned red, then darker. Panic filled his eyes as oxygen flow was restricted. The entire warehouse rose. The roar was deafening. Preston began desperately slapping Alia's arm. I was tapping. The referee moved in immediately and confirmed the submission. Alia released him. Preston rolled onto his side, gasping, defeated, humiliated before thousands of witnesses. Then police officers began moving through the crowd toward the cage. Detective Rochelle Grant had been watching the live stream when Preston's confession began. She had immediately called for backup. "Preston Hale, you're under arrest," Detective Grant announced as she entered the cage. "You have the right to remain silent." Preston struggled unsteadily to his feet. "You can't arrest me." His voice was breathless. "My father will have your badge. Your father has been calling our station, trying to control the damage." Detective Grant replied as she secured handcuffs around his wrists. "Turns out, confessing to arson on a live stream makes our job pretty easy." Colton was already in custody near the medical station. Still dazed from Zaria's head kick, Officer Bryce Turner read him his rights while paramedics examined his pupils for signs of concussion. The crowd pressed against the barriers. Phones recorded every second. Students who had remained silent for months suddenly found their voices. "Did you burn the gym? Did Preston's father really pay off Dean Whitford? How many girls did you hurt?" Preston kept his head lowered. The confident predator who had terrorized students for years was gone. The steroids that had built his artificial muscles couldn't help him anymore. Lila Moreno pushed through the crowd with her camera. She broadcast live to her journalism channel. "Preston Hale and Colton Vance are being arrested in connection with assault, conspiracy to commit arson, steroid distribution, and conspiracy involving an illegal gambling operation." She looked toward the camera. "Evidence includes recorded statements from tonight's fights and audio recovered from deleted live streams." The story exploded across social media. Preston's father issued a public statement distancing the family from his son. The university called an emergency board meeting. Donors who had remained silent suddenly demanded accountability. Dean Camille Whitford submitted her resignation. Lila had released emails proving Whitford had buried complaints, deleted disciplinary records, and coordinated with Preston's father to silence victims. The university immediately accepted her resignation in an effort to contain the scandal. Detective Grant spent the night processing evidence. Recovered audio from Colton's live stream provided direct proof of the arson conspiracy. Preston's confessions during the fight had been broadcast to more than 50,000 people. Former victims began coming forward with testimony they had previously been too frightened to share. Both Preston and Colton eventually faced multiple felony charges. The district attorney announced that prosecutors would seek maximum sentences because of the scope of their crimes and the institutional corruption that had protected them. The university fully reinstated Aaliyah and Zaria and issued formal apologies. Their MMA qualifier invitations were restored with expedited processing. The athletic department offered both sisters full scholarships and access to any training facility on campus. National news organizations picked up the story. Videos of the twins' victories appeared on sports networks alongside discussions of university corruption and institutional accountability. Weeks later, Coach Everett Briggs slowly walked through the front door of his rebuilt gym. His lungs were still recovering from smoke inhalation, but doctors had cleared him for light activity. The new facility was twice the size of the old one. Community donations had poured in from around the country after Lila's reporting became national news. Local businesses donated equipment. Former MMA professionals sent signed gear and training materials. A gleaming sign hung over the entrance. Carter Combat Academy. Alia and Zaria were leading a youth class when Coach Briggs arrived. 20 neighborhood children practiced combinations against heavy bags beneath their instruction. The sight brought tears to Coach Briggs's eyes. He blamed them on lingering smoke sensitivity. "Looking good in here," he said, his voice still slightly rough. Zaria grinned and carefully hugged him. "We kept your rules." Coach Briggs raised an eyebrow. "Let's hear them." Discipline first. Attitude second. Technique third. Smart girl. Then he looked between the twins. "How are those sponsorship deals treating you?" Alia adjusted a young boy's stance beside a heavy bag. "3 companies want to sign us after nationals, and the university is covering all our expenses through graduation." Coach Briggs nodded. "You earned every bit of it." The afternoon class ended with the children practicing basic defensive positions. Alia watched how focused they were, how seriously they treated the responsibility of learning how to protect themselves. As the last students began leaving, a small black girl appeared hesitantly in the doorway. She couldn't have been older than 12. She wore an oversized hoodie and clutched a crumpled $20 bill in one hand. She stepped inside slowly, staring at the pristine equipment and motivational posters covering the walls. Alia approached her. She immediately recognized the nervousness. She remembered feeling exactly the same way when she first stepped into Iron Forge. "Hi there." The girl looked up. "First time?" She nodded without trusting herself to speak. "What's your name?" "Nia." Alia smiled. She took a pair of youth training gloves from the equipment rack. Then she knelt and helped Nia put them on, tightening the Velcro straps until they fit correctly. "First lesson," Alia said. She looked directly into the girl's eyes. "Nobody decides where you belong except you." I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the meantime, I've handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you'll enjoy. Have a great day.